E before it now, so now it's Eoi.
Eoi.
And it means yes. All liquid drum and bass is just boring as fuck.
Hey.
Woman to deplete nut. Must die is my favorite art. You will have my complete nut. I've been saving this for 16 months.
better. Whoa. Nice. This off. Hello. Hi. For the second time, I suppose. Yeah. Alright, I'm just gonna wait till I can see myself on this thing and then we'll get chatting. Hi, for the second time. Apologies again about what happened on Friday, or would have been your Thursday, I suppose. But yeah, welcome. We're back for a nice Sunday session. Yeah, all right, let's see who's here. Do you want to just drop an F in the chat so I can see who's watching? Yeah, everything seems to be good. No more G, let's get it. Sick. Actually, I might just close this. Cool. Nice and moody. Cool, cool. All right, who we got? There's many Fs. Lovely. Okay, so let us get to the point. Okay, so I feel like everyone's here. I'm not going to hang around and wait for too long. I feel like we've been, streaming for 10 minutes already, so I'll pretty much get straight into it. But yeah, effectively what's going to happen today, I'm going to talk about my creative process, how I make stuff, how I go about overcoming sort of like roadblocks and like potholes, how I cultivate ideas, and then that'll go for 60 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes, theoretically 30 minutes of Q&A, so you can ask whatever you want. And I definitely recommend taking advantage of this time. I'm more than happy to go over with the Q&A stuff and just sort of make sure everyone gets their questions answered and everything. So if you think of something while I'm streaming or while I'm just talking, or if you have something already that you want to ask me, save it for the end. We will have plenty of time for questions, and I'm more than happy to answer anything like off topic or whatever, even if it's meme related. I don't care. Yeah, cool. So I pretty much asked you guys all about your producer names and everything, so I'm not going to go all over with that. I think I'm just going to jump straight in and start waffling on. But yeah, like I said, if you think of anything during it, save your questions for the Q&A, and I will answer all of those at the end. I'm just going to set a timer for myself. So I sort of... Okay, actually, we're going to wait. We're going to wait a little bit. Yeah. Sick. All right. We'll wait a little bit for some more dudes to join. Sick. Just gonna squeeze through my notice. Okay, I'm hoping there's not as much delay as there was last time, because it's I feel like it's difficult to keep up with the chat. But yes. Sick, so we'll hang out for a bit. I might just show you some of the sounds in this project, because I will talk about sound design if you guys ask for it, but this is not going to be so much sound design focused, but more like workflow focused. But I'll give you a little bit of some sound design stuff at the beginning just so you get your source. Yeah, if you came in the Discord, you would have probably heard this beat. 1 minute delay. Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, so it's trying to emulate like Cohen sound, kind of like Mr. Brownish stuff with this. I don't know what this sounds like dry, actually. Still pretty crunchy. I think I was I started this beat by like running all my shit through a actually hang on a sec, sorry. Nah, it's all good. I started this beat because I was making this weird drum beat, just like acoustic stuff, and then I ran it through Driver, which is like this weird plugin. Let me try and find. All right, well, I've got like a big resample history for this one, I think. Current project, samples, recorded. Should be like right at the beginning here somewhere. Yeah. And yeah, pretty much everything's running through Driver, which is this Native Instruments plugin, and then so I was just kind of mucking around with this beat for a long time. Just distorting it and then started building. I think there's a big gap there time-wise, but basically I like distorted this beat and then resampled that and made the bass off of the distorted like Driver resample, which became... And then I just did ridiculous amounts of filtering and shit. Which there's definitely like a bunch of things on this. A lot of it is just like little EQ tweaks and stuff. So like that's not being used. That's not being used. This would be like mixing stuff. This here is like a songwriting effect. So I've just like cranked this delay effect. Yeah, you can hear like delay and reverb swells and shit. Yeah, okay, apparently we're good to go. Whoever's in here now is who is gonna see the lesson. Do you use dynamic tube a lot? Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's good for getting like analog crunchiness and like phase off, well, like DC offsetting shit. It depends though. Sometimes it can really trash stuff, but yeah, I mean, like you'd know that. Also, Decapitator gives a similar sound, but just more like more conducive to analog. But yeah, cool. All right, let's crack into it. See how we go. Okay, so I'm gonna try and hone in on some sort of continuity here, but I may jump all over the place because I've got a lot of shit that I want to kind of talk about. The main crux, or the main reason I sort of picked this topic, so Stereo basically gave me the option to decide whatever I want to talk about, and I said I wanted to talk about creativity in terms of like, I guess, how I navigate it, because I've been making music for basically 10 years now. I started when I was 15, and I released my first song in September, so I would have turned 15 that September, and then yeah, I turned 24 this year, so like just over 9 years. And I've had a couple of hiatuses, but for the most part, I've pretty much done it consistently. And so I've learned a lot of things about, I guess, what works and what doesn't, how good ideas happen, how I've killed good ideas, how I've struggled to write good ideas, and like where the fun is. And I guess fun, I think, would be the main thing I would land on in terms of what the central element of my creativity is that I need to have fun. And so I guess I wanted to sort of show off that a bit in my process. But yeah, anyway, so here's this beat that I've been working on, and I picked this project, it's sort of just a recent one. I picked this because it's kind of a big mess of shit. Like there's a whole bunch of different ideas in this, and they're all based on the same sounds, but it showcases a lot of what my process is like and how I kind of just make weird shit and then let it evolve into a beat. But yeah, so I'll show you just a few different bits of this and like, yeah, how it kind of evolved. I think this was the first segment that I made for this. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of it. Definitely like multiple bases going. Yeah, so I made, that would have been the first beat I made. And like I said before, I started with this weird beat and then I resampled it and made this bass. So I kind of built this song originally around the sound design. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is kind of, I guess, the things that I have already ready to go. And this for me is an iteration of a philosophy I have, which is eliminating all of the shit that you don't want to do when you create, so you can have as much fun as possible and spend as much time as you want on the things that you actually enjoy doing, and don't fuck around with all of the things that feel like they're, you know, draining your process. So as much as I did all the sound design here with this from scratch, there were a bunch of things that I already had set up. And the first one is this drum rack. I just realized I'm going to get the chat visible so that everyone can see. Yeah. So the first thing I have set up all ready to go is my drum rack. Now there's kind of different iterations of this from project to project because I've like refined this like drum rack setup that I've got over a lot of projects. But effectively one thing that I was running into with a lot of my projects was that my process were getting killed by doing the same things over and over again. And it was specifically sidechain and like drum sequencing. So I would make these really nice drum sounds, whether or not I imported them or like imported them from samples I'd made already, or I made them from scratch. I would have a beat in my head and then I'd spend ages like layering out all the audio and stuff and then like drawing out all the sidechain or linking everything. And it was one of those things that it was going to be the same pretty much every time. The only thing that would change was maybe like the length of the sidechain. But I pretty much always wanted a kick snare sidechain and I want a hi-hat pattern and stuff. And I just hated having this big mess of drums and shit. So I put everything in a drum rack. And then I set up a sidechain rack. So basically, right off the bat, what I have is this setup where I put all of my drums in MIDI like this, and I can just write a beat. I drop the kicks in here, snares in here, and all hi-hats here. And the kicks sidechain, snares sidechain separately, and then all my hi-hats don't do anything. So I'm going to show you how I actually do this, and this is one of the things that helps me sort of crack into ideas really quickly. This is a bit of a weird one. There's definitely an easier iteration of this, but basically what I've got, oh yeah, my mixing is another thing I do. So I have like this mixing output that I link everything to, and this makes my sidechain easier. So I have my drums in one channel, and then everything that I'm sidechaining basically in another channel, and then sometimes with other projects, I'll have a third channel, which I guess I would call like a output chain or whatever. I might have a third one where I don't sidechain things, and then I can mix those separately. And it just makes everything very modular, so I can sort of like change things as I go, all in one go, rather than like tweaking every single sound and putting a sidechain thing on every single sound. I just group it all and then send it to a bus. But this is my sidechain rack, and it's basically shaper box, and then there's an Ableton compressor as well to kind of like tidy things up. But the base concept is this. Effectively, I send MIDI from my drum rack to this shaper box sidechain. And basically what it is I have one for my kick and one for my snare. So you'll see here, if I just trigger the right note, should be able to see this. Cool. You can see when I trigger my kicks, this is triggered, but then as soon as I play a snare or anything else in this drum rack, it doesn't trigger this. So I use a MIDI filter to do that basically. I have a better version of this, like I said, where I group it all into one rack, but effectively this is the concept. I have this MIDI track here that takes the MIDI out of the drum rack, and then I use this MIDI pitch effect here to filter from C1 up to the next 3 semitones. And basically what this does is just cut out everything except those 4 notes, so C1, C sharp 1, D1, D sharp 1. And that's all my kick notes. And then I do the same thing with my snare. So you can see all of my snare stuff goes through, and then if I play anything outside of that, it blocks it. So if you want to see like a better explanation of that, I do actually have my sidechain setup explained on my YouTube channel. There's a video up, pretty sure. Otherwise it's on Upscale TV. But I'll make that available if you guys ask at the end. I can send that for you. But this is a really good iteration of this philosophy I have, which is just eliminating unnecessary work. So I do sidechain with every single project I do pretty much, because I like the sound of sidechain drums. But what it means is that I can bust open a project and basically just start writing straight away. I can make some cool sounds, and I know I'm going to want to sidechain to some drums. So I'll just drop the drums into the drum rack, drop my sounds into this group here, which is already sidechained, and straight away, as soon as I've got like a fat sound and some drums, it's mixed together to some degree into a groove. So that makes life pretty easy. Also, if you guys want me to slow down, let me know. I've had a shit ton of coffee, so I'm probably rushing a bit. Yeah, so that would be the first thing I do. First setup, I've got sidechain. The other thing is my samples. So this is another thing, and I guess I base this off of my philosophy of like kind of building your creative process around having fun and all the things that you enjoy. And this will be different for every person. So some people won't love sound design, and I wouldn't judge you if you wanted to use other people's sounds and you go and splice and or download presets or whatever. I think you should build your process around whatever it is that you actually enjoy doing. So if you're someone that's like really enjoys doing the melodic stuff, then set up your workflow in a way that allows you to just write melodies and flex that muscle. And if you want to grow in other areas, you can, but I'm one of those people that I think you shouldn't do anything that you actually don't want to do unless it actually brings you closer to doing something that you want to do. So if you want to learn how to design drums and you don't enjoy it, then yeah, sure, go for it. But don't feel obliged to create anything from scratch so you don't need to. There's definitely a thing with neuroculture and like electronic music that you have to make everything yourself. Fuck that. Make good music. Who cares how you do it? But for me, I love sound design, but it's one of those things that really bogs me down if I'm in the middle of writing a song and then I think of a sound and it's like some really complicated FM thing that I'm going to be really fussy about. So what I do is I literally just do all my sound design in a different session, or I'll open a project and usually the first thing I'll do is sound design. And then if I don't use those sounds, or if they sound good and I just have no purpose for them at the time, I export them or save them as a rack, and then I put them in folders. And this folder specifically is all of my sounds that I've made recently. So like kicks, snares, basses, everything. Save it in a folder. Makes life like way easier. Because a lot of these, like I'm one of those people that I'm really fussy about the sound quality and the actual sound design of a song. Like it can be melodically brilliant and the idea can be sick, but if the snare sounds shit, I'm not going to want to release it. So I make sure that I have all of that stuff kind of set up and eliminated in a way that I don't have to fuss over it. So like here's a bunch of snares I've got. Yeah. I generally sort these by date because I usually just find the newest stuff sounds better. But sometimes I'll just change the sorting algorithm so that I can just like hear snares that I made like a couple years ago. It's cool. But that's really fun. So I like doing that. Same with kicks. I've started also saving kick 2 presets and stuff because that's fun. But yeah, you get the base concept. If you're someone who loves your sound design, but it bogs you down when you write, do your sound design separately and then save it somewhere. Yes, I do the same with basses and shit. Yes, all right. What else have I got here? Whoop, sorry. Let's rearrange this. All right. What else do I do? Got a big list of things. I'm just trying to think of where would be the best direction to go. Mad. Okay, I'll jump into writing ideas a little bit more. So another philosophy I have with writing ideas, and this is just based on how I work mentally and kind of how fun works for me. I'm really messy. So I make ridiculous amounts of mess when I write shit, and I'll just like drag random shit into a project and I'll move it over here and move it over there. When I was in FL Studio, if you've ever used FL Studio, it's basically like a big canvas in the arrangement view. So you can literally put anything anywhere and then you mix it down in another window. So for me, that was like probably the best and worst thing. I literally just like drop shit in, put it everywhere, but I'd arrange it how I thought about it and then clean it up later. And I used to kind of hate myself for this because other people would open my projects and just be like, what the fuck is this? Like, where is everything? Bit of a nightmare. I definitely had to learn how to like clean up after myself, but this is actually something that I've learned to incorporate into my process and build my process around it. So this is how I actually write tracks now. So what I'll do, I'll make one idea, and then when the ideas sound good, I'll basically take all the sounds and just like fuck around with the sounds in a completely different context or drop new sounds in. So here's some of the other stuff in this project. I just made same drums and shit. So this is that groove, and then yeah, big build up. Build up, and this sucks actually.
Hello my friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Moses and I'm going to teach you how to actually pronounce Superman.
heaps of shit here, I think. Okay, and then obviously at some point I got bored with this idea, and I wanted to mess around with some like vinyl samples. So then I just opened up, I started dropping sounds into a subgroup, a group within a group within a group, and just made an entirely different beat within that. So there's like all the melody stuff here. Bass and stuff there. These are your drums. So I've literally got another iteration of the exact same sidechain drum rack thing going within this group. This is one of those things that's pretty hard to do if your computer isn't super beefy. I invested good money into a really beefy computer so I could start doing this stuff, but I have done the laptop struggle. I literally had this like this MacBook. I still have the same MacBook. I had it since like 2014, and I just clogged it up with shit, and it would run super slow. So you can still make music with shitty gear, but like when you get to a point where you really love doing certain things, you'll spend good money on it. I'm sure some of you have. And then this.
Fuck. It's Copycatt. Okay.
I just started being stupid here.
Fuck.
And then... Okay, and then more recently, so this was probably like way earlier this year that I made this project, and then more recently I came back to it and was like, I want to actually try and make a groove, like a section of this that I can play live, or like play in a DJ set, because this is still just like a beat. I sound like Forrest Gump when I said that. It's just a beat. That doesn't sound like Forrest Gump. So I made this kind of like Odd Future-esque intro. It's pretty dry, like I don't have any effects on it right now. But then made this build up. And again, I've taken the same sounds and just kind of made like an updated version of the drop and left the original one where it is. Cool. Yeah, so you kind of get the idea. Like, I've started with one idea, and I basically try to just break the structure of how I would expect to write songs as much as possible and make as much room for having fun and mucking around and exploring the idea as I can. Which brings me to another philosophy. Nothing is ever finished. No idea you make will ever be finished. There's never like a point where you're like, okay, that's done. What you basically do is you reach a point where you decide, I'm going to cap it here and let people hear this. But you can always go back to an old project, pull the sounds out, make V2, make a VIP, make a completely different track, pull the sounds apart. And that's something that I really want to like open up and like kind of emphasize, is like, don't feel like you've got to do this like songwriting structure where you sit down and just like write a song from start to finish and then close the project and that's done. Like, it's all just sounds on your computer. It's all just ideas sitting there. So don't cap your ideas at one song, and don't cap a project at one idea. Literally just use it as a big workspace. And that's what I do. And yeah, that's what I've done with this. So this will be one iteration, but what I've started doing now, an extension again, because I'm someone that I make a lot of like new beats. Like, I mean, not in the sense that like I have a ridiculous output, but in the sense like I spend a lot of time mixing down stuff. And not that my mix downs are perfect, but like gluing sounds together in a certain way and experimenting with like palettes and how like a certain set of drums will sound with a certain bass and like the rhythmic structure before I even write a song. But then the problem is I spend so much time doing that I go to write a song and I'm like, oh, I don't like this beat. So then I try to start a new beat and just write a song, but the sounds aren't as good because I didn't spend anywhere near as long as I did on the other thing. So what I've started doing is with stuff like this, if I spend ages like layering all these sounds and making all this cool shit and the idea sucks, break it all down, use the mix down you've got and just write a completely new track. And that's like best of both worlds. Great sound design, great mixing, and you've also got the freedom to write whatever you want. And you don't have that like that roadblock of having to do all your mixing and shit later. It's already done. So I really like doing that. That's a lot of fun. There's definitely somewhere I was going with that, and I've totally lost my train of thought there. Okay, I'll briefly talk about cleaning up after myself. Okay, I'm actually just going to quickly switch projects here. And groups and stuff will help you a lot here. Do I want to save this? Yeah, I do. Groups and stuff will save you a lot. If you're not in Ableton, you're in like FL Studio or something like that, I basically just recommend buses. So you can have your sounds, you know, spread out across your mixer as much as you want, but have like some lanes where you generally just like, well, I do anyway. I have lanes where I generally just like sum up the groups, like, you know, like a normal mixing desk, like vocals and like drums and bass and stuff. Makes it easier to tidy up later. Yeah, so I'll just show you what I do briefly anyway. I feel like you guys are probably already akin to a lot of these concepts, but bouncing stuff down really helps. So what I do, like I said, I make a huge mess and there'll be shit all over this project. But once I've made this huge mess and spread myself out, what I basically do, and this doesn't just apply to writing music, you can do this with anything, like for visual artists, they do mood boarding, and I'll go into that a little bit as well. But basically, the whole idea is just to explore as much of an idea as you can until you find something that you really gravitate to, and then basically strip that out of this big mess you've made and remove all the other things. So this is a second version of this project, basically, and what I've got, I made a huge mess to begin with, and I put a whole bunch of sounds there, and I've like muted shit and made it like, yeah, made a huge mess basically. And then what I've done is I've just chucked things into groups and reduced it down to this and then bounced it into stems. And that's not to say that the song is done, but what it's about is actually capping off your process and being like, all right, look, I think I'm at a point where I like this idea enough that I would turn this into a song. Not to say that the old project is like, you know, I'm done with that. I can go back and use those sounds. But for this song, to simplify everything down, I'm just going to cut off the nitty gritty process and just distill it down to these stems. So I bounce everything down to stems. I actually don't know why I needed to open a project to show you how to bounce stuff down to stems, but anyway, you can hear this, and this is quite fun.
Glad to hear it, thanks fuck.
Actually, I've got some dank ass distortion on the master. I wanna, yeah. But yeah, anyway, I know someone's gonna, sorry, I hate the, there's a frequency echo on one of those sounds and it rings out every time. I know someone's gonna ask me to open this up a bit, so I'll show you some of the stuff in this. But effectively, the concept I'm trying to show you is that there's a whole bunch of shit going on in this project, and if I were to just leave it in this state, I would eventually, and this has happened to me many times, I would eventually get stressed out by how much shit is in this project and not want to touch it. And so, and Frequent's also talked about this a lot, because like if you've listened to Frequent's music, there's just like just so much shit going on. And he's someone who religiously bounces stuff down. And the reason this is because if you get, once you get to a certain weight, not only does it weigh down your CPU, but it weighs down your creativity to think about all of these tiny things going on. And so you find a way to simplify it, and then you find a cutoff point where you're like, all right, this is generally around about when I start getting exhausted by having all of this stuff to think about. So now I'll bounce things down to stems, and I can play with audio. And this basically rejuvenates your process so you can start playing with the idea as though you were doing a remix or something like that. So all the sounds are there, and you can, yeah, and you can look at it fresh and just think of it in a really simple way, do like hard silences and chops and stuff like that. Something I would definitely recommend doing. I totally wasn't intending to open a project to do this. I know someone will probably ask me about this project afterwards, so just, yeah, save it for the Q&A. Or don't ask me about this project. You don't need to know about my process. That's not why you're here. Okay. Yeah, bounce stuff down to stems. I did this with the Rushing Back remix as well, if you've heard that. Effectively, what I had was I made the first section of the track where it was all the melodic stuff because I really wanted to focus on the melody and the vocals and that sort of thing. And by the time I got to writing a drop, I'd already been working on the track for like 2 or 3 days, and I was just exhausted of looking at it. And to do like a whole mix down for like a drop and that sort of thing, it would have been really hard to squeeze that into this like kind of mix I'd made for all the melodic stuff. And I thought, well, I can write drops pretty quickly from scratch, but incorporating a drop into a mess I've already made is really hard to do the mix down and make it all fat. So I just opened a new project, bounced the old one down into stems, and then dropped it into a new project. So I just had like remix stems basically, and did just the drop in this project. And then once I was pretty happy with that, I basically bounced that drop down in a similar manner to stems, and went back to the original project and just put it in next to it. So I had like melody, intro, all that stuff as one set of mix down, and then the drop underneath it basically. And then what was cool is that because all of that was in audio, I could chop it up and like scatter it throughout the project, and not worry about like moving all these little bits of stuff around. Yeah, so bouncing out of stems, definitely recommend that. Sick. Cool. I feel like I don't know if I'm flying through this or going really slowly. I actually can't tell. Yeah, making a mess, talked about that. Building tracks from existing songs, I already talked about that. And just like using mix downs that you've already done. That's like definitely a big learning curve for me or something. Okay, I want to talk about mood boarding and like cultivating creativity and how I go about doing that. Because this is something that I've studied a bit more. I sort of had this habit for a while of just like opening Ableton and staring at it, and I'd make the same shit over and over again, which is fine. Like, and you like refine a style by doing that. If they're conventions that you really like, you'll probably strike gold at some point. You know, even just law of averages. If you make the same thing over and over again, you will get better at it and probably eventually make something really great out of it. But I felt like there was better ways to start a song off, or like come up with an idea and get a feel for things I liked. And one thing I noticed was that if I went through all of the things that I was listening to, okay, so first of all, I noticed that like when I wrote good songs, it was often because I was emulating somebody. So I'd hear like a tune that I really liked, and this has happened a couple times, like say It's Some, if you've heard It's Some, that track, I was emulating Herzloid's Spam, and I literally was just listening to it on iTunes and then going in and like kind of emulating all the things that I liked about it. Turned into its own thing. It sounded sick. I loved that. But I noticed a lot of the tracks I was making kind of happen that way, where I would hear something I really liked and just emulate it, and that would stem into a good track rather than just opening Ableton, dropping in sounds that I'd made, or like doing some sound design and then trying to come up with a groove with what was in my head. So I started experimenting with like, I guess kind of ways to explore my taste before I start, like almost giving myself a reference point of things that I like before I start writing. And I started doing this weird thing. So if you've ever seen visual art or like done any visual art stuff, or I'm sure there's a lot of creative professions that do it. But there's a thing that's called mood boarding, where you basically, and I'll show you I also do this for visual stuff as well. But basically the idea is just collecting shit that you really like and looking at it all. And what you'll find is no matter who you are, no matter how long you've been creating for, if you start to collect the things that you like and look at them all in one group, you'll notice continuity. You'll notice like common thread or like common themes and things that that pop up a lot in your taste. So initially for me, this started with playlists. So I'll try and I've got a million Spotify playlists because it's something I do very often. But I started trying to collect Beat. I feel like that's a good one, or Nightcrawl. Yeah, I started making playlists and just looking through the stuff that I liked and trying to find threads. And for me, obviously, one of the things I found was like loose hip hop grooves, really dirty drums. So this is like an Arab music track I really like. It's real simple, but just like and I guess what I'd do is I'd listen to the ones that really inspired me and try and pick out the things that I like most about it. For this track, there's not a lot going on in this track, but specifically the drums, I love the way they clip. I love the looseness of the hi-hats, the way they sit. So snare comes in real early. I think it's probably more the snare that comes in early than the hi-hats late. But then the more I look through tracks that I like, the more I notice these are the things that were popping up all the time. So here's another track that I really dig.
You ain't family just 'cause they call you cuz. I know a few used to Benz and some that never was. And I ain't have to grow up in streets, I know it well enough. Growing up with homies that grew up in it.
Yeah, so again, dirty drums, loose hip-hop grooves, and probably some like repeated melodic element I really like. So I start getting a sense for like what conventions do I enjoy listening to a lot. And if you do like DJ set, this is actually a really interesting thing, is sort of the correlation between like the way you might think about a DJ set and the way you think about creating. You'll learn a lot about your tastes and kind of common threads and how they glue together if you start doing DJ sets and having to assemble your taste, because you have to basically figure out how to group things you like together. So it's actually a really good exercise. So if you're someone that wants to get into mixing, or you've been thinking about it and you produce, but you want to get into mixing, I definitely recommend just messing around with playlists and then trying to layer them together and stuff. But yeah. Again, loose groove, dirty drums, that sort of thing. So I make a lot of playlists where I'll like, and sometimes I'll try and pick a theme and I'll try and get a feel, and like it's really arbitrary, it'll just be some feeling in my head, and I'll try and pick sounds that all suit that. And I'm basically, playlist would be, I guess, the most basic form of a mood board in some ways. So I started doing that. And then when I started wanting to do like shows and I started thinking about visuals, I started to think more about my brand and I guess like what I wanted to create, what feel I wanted to create. I wanted to kind of see, I guess, firstly, what my taste would look like visually and then how it would all merge together. So the next thing I did is I made a Pinterest. All right, I'm just going to bust this open and hopefully show you. Let me log in here. Should have logged in before I started. Just give me a sec. Hiya. Actually, I'll just see if I can find my page right up. But basically, again, what you'll find is that if you start looking, yeah, actually, fuck it, I'll just open the Miller note. I was pretty progressed at this point. I started, not that this is like a perfect example of my taste or whatever, but if you start collecting things that you like, you will notice threads. And I was quite surprised. I'm not someone who's very like hands-on in terms of like physical stuff. I was never good at drawing or anything like that. And decorating my room, I was never good at that. But once I started to collect images I liked, I noticed threads. I noticed repetition in certain things that I really like. And so I definitely noticed that with the visual stuff, like big blocky, like text, like sort of like Futura kind of thing, and black and white, like faded blacks, off whites, sort of like dirty textured things. I just started collecting this stuff. And so I started sort of mood boarding, and then I thought, okay, well, can I actually do this with audio? And initially what I would do, I just started putting sketches next to images. And what you can do on Millernote. So this is Millernote, by the way. This is a really cool creative tool. I'm one of those people who spends a fuck ton of time just like exploring random productivity tools and wasting money on them and usually not using half of them. But occasionally I find a good one. And this is one of them. You can basically put anything anywhere. But I just get like visuals up and then listen to my own demos looking at these visuals. And that was a really good way to sort of give context to the stuff I was creating. That feels exceptionally loud. But I kind of really like just like looking at the pictures here while I listen to like the drop and that sort of thing. And I just like, yeah, browse around and look at shit. So that helps me sort of get ideas for like visuals, and I guess with live shows and that sort of thing, like what kind of things look good with my music. And so you just drop shit in and look at it. But then I got to the point where I wanted to just experiment with raw sounds and see, rather than trying to write tracks, just writing, like assembling noises and seeing how they sound together. So I started doing this weird thing, which I call sound palettes, where I basically just take audio files and smush them together. And Ableton's pretty good with this. Like I just like literally crossfade stuff together. But literally it would be one audio file and I could drag in tracks that I've already made, like straight out of iTunes, weird drums that I've made, basses, and just like fade them together. So there's a couple here. Okay, and then literally some of these won't even be like rhythmic or musical. It'll just be like noises. Oh, yeah. Another one. I played that one already. What else I got? But yeah, I'll do that with anything. And this is another thing I started doing. So roping this in with the emulation thing. If you don't make your own sounds that you really like and you just want to literally see how like shit you like will glue together, what I started doing is if a track really inspired me, I would snip a bit of the audio and put it in a folder. So I've got like a bunch of just like random snippets of tunes. And there's things that I know that I like about these tracks, but it's just nice to literally look at all these specific bits of audio all next to each other and see how my taste kind of all glues together. So this is all. I've got a bit of Flying Lotus. Zodiac shit. Oh yeah, this is the beat at the end of Zodiac shit. This is a bit of a King Cruel concert.
Back to the early age.
But this is one of those things when you get to the point, like I feel like when I started out, I just wanted to emulate specific people. Like say, like for the first 3 or 4 years of production, it was either Skrillex or Cohen sound I wanted to sound like. And that was a really good way to cut my teeth and learn how to produce. I would like put their sounds into Ableton or FL Studio at the time, or I just listen to it on iTunes and try and emulate their snare sounds or like try and emulate a bass. And that was a really good way to learn sound design. And that's a really great phase. If you're in that phase where you've got like really 1 or 2 specific artists that you're really trying to emulate, like enjoy that phase. Don't feel guilty about coughing people. Like this is how you like cut your teeth. But you will get to a point where no one specific artist will inspire you completely. You'll just have smaller and smaller fragments of taste where you're like, I really like the way this guy does his drums, or I really like the melodic element of this guy's sound, or like, I really like this acoustic artist. And you kind of have to start taking bits and pieces and like assembling together this idea of like, what do I actually like and what does my sound look like? And I'm of the idea that with your creativity, no matter what it is, whether you're a visual artist or you, I don't know, like even in the non-creative field, say you're interested in law or something like that, try to imagine every one of your interests as one big picture and just lump it all together and make a big mess, and then eventually draw links and remove seams and go, oh, actually these two can kind of mix like this. And you will start to find what comes out of it is a brand. It's actually like your sound and your taste. So I found this was a really good way to actually just experiment with sounds. So what I might do is like, say, take the bits of like the drums from this. Oh, fuck. That's real loud. So just like warp this. So I like that. And I really like the melodic stuff from this. Okay, so let's say I just take some like melodic chops from this. I don't know if this is going to sound good because I'm kind of rushing this, but let's chop like a snare out of this. Let's take a kick out of here. And just see how these sort of gel together. Might sound terrible, who knows. Let's see if I can get some hi-hats as well. Let's do like some weird double snare shit. And then I'll gradually, like if I like how it sounds, I'll gradually add in other sounds and stuff. It'll be really weird at first, and so you kind of just experiment, but what else have I got in here? Like obviously if you want to make it rhythmic, you can. So like I could try and snap this to the grid a bit more and just like drop snares in. Let's do this. Shorten it. I like that. Let's do that. And see, the thing is, like, I know a lot of people probably wouldn't do this because they're worried about copyright, but for me, this is just a really great way to explore an idea, because if I find something that I really like, I can learn how to make that sound from scratch, and I can learn how to emulate it as best I can. And the thing is, like, no matter who you are and whether you're good at sound design or whatever, you will learn how to make the things that you like. So don't feel intimidated to try and emulate something from scratch. Like, it doesn't matter what you're good at. If you really, like, continue to work at it, you will get good at it. So even if I can't use this idea as it is, which I wouldn't be afraid to, like, fuck it, chuck it on SoundCloud, let somebody else be inspired by it, but at least I can get an idea about a new sound that is actually just a collection of things that I really like. But yeah, and then if I like that, I can go in and, like, I think there's another folder here with a bunch of basses and shit. Actually, don't know if I like any of these noises, to be honest, but I'll just chuck something in there. See how it goes. Pitch it down. But there's kind of no possibility, like no, there's kind of no possibilities. There's kind of endless possibilities with this. But yeah, I'd really recommend just making a mess, fucking around with weird sounds and seeing what happens. Be 100 gecs if you got to be. But yeah, so that's one thing I would do. Milanote is definitely another thing I would recommend if you're wanting to just like experiment with visuals and stuff like that. Get on Milanote. If you're someone who doesn't understand your visual taste and you don't really know what you like, get on Pinterest and just like think of the last thing you saw that was cool and type in the best way you can describe it into the Pinterest search bar and start saving shit. And eventually you'll start to see a taste form. Yeah, so that's, I guess, a sort of a vague bit of advice also about building a brand and that sort of thing. All right, powering through this. Writer's block. Okay. I'm going to go into a bit more detail here about writer's block. I'm going to talk about my journey a little bit with creativity, kind of the dips I've had. Yeah, because I feel like literally everyone in this seminar has probably experienced writer's block at some point, or even if you're new to it, just experience the insecurity of feeling like nothing you make is good. And I kind of want to talk about writer's block from the angle that, in my opinion, calling it writer's block as like a phenomena that happens is something that I really don't like, because I'm a big believer in the idea that anything can be fixed. And hearing writer's block is like this weird thing that happens that we just kind of let it be, and like I don't know, that annoys me. There's ways you can fix your process. So I want to talk about that a bit. So I'm just going to go through a bit of my creative history here. I'm just going to try and find some points. I literally like wrote out sort of a rough timeline of all the things I've done creatively, like my journey and the main times I've had writer's block. Cool. All right. So I started making music in 2011. I was messing around with software before that. I've kind of been like messing around with things creatively for most of my life. Like when I was young, I used to do like stop motion stuff. So it was just like claymation or Lego, and I just like take a photo, move a bit, take a photo, move a bit. If you don't know what stop motion is, like think like Wallace and Gromit, or yeah, I don't know, like Chicken Run, that sort of thing. So I used to do that, and then I got into game making. So I like had like Game Maker 7, or no, it would have been Game Maker 6 back then, and I would just like try and make video games. And then I wanted to be a filmmaker for a bit. So I've always kind of like messed around and made things for fun, but music for some reason, when I got into it, I was like 15, and as soon as I posted a tune and people heard it, it's just like this new experience had been opened up to me of actually like allowing people to experience the things that I'd created and like making it this thing that I do. And as soon as that happened, it was literally like suddenly that was my thing and I was doing it and I was real serious about it. And I literally have not stopped since that day. which is weird to think about because everything else I just mucked around with and didn't land on it. But that being said, music is the thing I've had the most stress, and probably just maybe just by the length of time I've been doing it, music is the thing I've had the most stress and insecurity about, and experienced that feeling of writer's block and that sort of thing. So I was writing music 2011. I think from about 2011 to 2013, I was trying to do like electro house dubstep stuff. And then I heard Cohen's sound. Yeah, probably would have been 2012, 2013, and started trying to emulate that. Did some releases. I had little moments where like I felt stuff wasn't going, like I wasn't happy with what I was writing, but I never kind of stopped. Then I finished school. Some shit happened in my life that I just like, things were terrible, so I didn't write for a little bit. But after a little while, I remember coming back to music, and I had this idea come into my head where it was just, I just literally had this insecurity that everything I was going to write was never going to be better than anything I'd already written. Like I'd already peaked and dropped off. So I hit this massive rut for a while. And the weird thing was I was still writing things, but I was really kind of insecure about the stuff that I was writing. Even if it was good, I couldn't hear it. Like I would literally write stuff and be like, oh man, like everything sucks and I just can't write any good ideas. I must have done this for ages. And then actually, all right, nah, I'm not going to talk about that one because I feel like that kind of led into me starting Copycatt. It was kind of weird. But I've had a few times in my creative journey where I've hit this roadblock where I feel like I'm never going to write anything better than what I've already written. And one time was I just left Brisbane. I'd written my first EP, released Mother on SoundCloud, 2-track EP, started to get a lot of traction with that. I released It's and then I moved home with my folks because I lost my job, which was sick. And I remember at that point having this real serious insecurity of like, oh man, I'm never going to write anything better than what I've written before. I kept writing anyway, but I just was like super insecure about it. And then after like a couple of months, I wrote Survive with Maxim. Well, it was eventually with Maxim. took a real long time for that to happen. I wrote a remix for a national like remix comp, which is like this theme to this kids show called Play School, and a bunch of other things. And they turned out to be the best things that I'd ever done. And I thought that was really weird. And I've had this a lot of times where I've had this big dip where I write a bunch of shit and then I kind of like coast on it for a while. And then I hit this lull where I'm like expecting everything I write to be really good. And so I'm kind of like constantly measuring it as I'm writing it. But the first encouragement I would want to say, if you've ever experienced writer's block, is that for me, usually I write my best shit right after I have this season of like, oh man, everything I write sucks. And I'm really like, not winning, and then I'll write a bunch of really great shit. And the first thing I learned, I think, about that is that usually what happens is as soon as I get a sense of like, I write something one day that suddenly like gives me a sense of like, oh, this is actually pretty sick. Suddenly this like faith hits me where I'm like, actually, I'm really good. And then I write a whole bunch of really great shit after that. So one of the things that I believe causes writer's block is actually what you believe in the first place. So if you're constantly telling yourself that you suck and you believe that your stuff is shit and don't try to write music anyway, you won't see any results. You end up with this like feedback loop of like, oh, I didn't write anything good today. I didn't write a really good beat in 15 minutes, so fuck it. I would recommend if you get stuck in that rut, one of the things you can do, Mr. Bill does this a bit. I think there's a cutoff point where you can work yourself too hard. Make sure you're still having fun, but just write stuff anyway. Literally just make a beat for 45 minutes. Don't get attached to it. Just make something and then leave it. You don't have to do anything with it. But realize that you are still the same creative, whether or not you think you're great. You are still capable of being great, even in that moment. So you can accidentally write a really good beat. And then you might look at it and be like, oh, I'm great. And then suddenly have all this confidence and start writing shit. Oh, I'm really like caffeinated right now. So I feel like I'm darting around this concept so much. Gosh, I'm trying to think of where I was going to go with that. Yeah, so Survive happened. And that was right out of a really insecure place. And then that remix I did for that Play School comp, I won. And that was nationwide. So I went on nationwide radio. It was really weird, actually. It was a really weird experience, like, because it's not that genre at all. Which actually I'll show you the, the tune I did for that, because it's like sort of really a character for me. There's... Yeah, this one. So my friend actually pushed me into doing this remix, which was really funny. I'm just gonna skip a bit here. Super cutesy, but yeah. Yeah, anyway, it's a really long remix, but yeah, that happened, and that was really fun. And I wrote a couple of other really good tunes around that time. I think I wrote another tune called Charlotte. Yeah, and then some really cool halftime stuff, which I never released. And then after that, I moved to Brisbane. I'd written Survive. I'd done that, had all this great shit happen. And then again, I hit this big slump of like being convinced that the stuff I'd just written was going to be the best stuff I'd ever written. And I would never like make anything good again. And that whole mentality spiraled me into this rut again, where I was like, oh, I'm not going to write anything good. And so every time I opened FL Studio, I'd get really demotivated really quickly. And then I made the To Discover remix, and that sounded sick. And then, yeah, multiple lulls. Fuck. Okay, I'm trying to think of how I got out of this, because I wrote all this down and I can't remember now. But effectively, the thing I've found is most of writer's block is to do with how you think about your own creativity, and sort of what you expect is going to happen. And oftentimes I find if you just write shit and don't think so hard about whether it's going to be good or bad, literally just make stuff, have fun, continue your process whether or not it's working, unless you're not enjoying, like if you're actually like forcing it because you're afraid you're not going to succeed, I'd recommend taking a break. But yeah, don't get bogged down in your own projections. That's what I would say. Yeah, what else have I written here? Cool. The other thing I would say about writer's block, be nice to yourself. So like I said, creativity stems from fun. And having done a whole bunch of creative shit before I did music, I was already pretty good at just mucking around. And I found I never had any of these issues of like worrying and like feeling like I wasn't good enough or the stuff I was making was good or bad. Everything was just fun, and it was really easy to create if I was just mucking around. And so if you're someone that gets stuck in a rut about like work, where you're like, man, I'm not doing enough, I'm not creating enough, gravitate towards things that actually help you have fun and relearn what that feels like, because that process and that place is actually where all of your creativity stems from. So for me, I write music, but I find I actually don't need to sit down for I don't need to spend all week making beats to write a good one. I have done that, and it generally doesn't result in more good music. I generally, to some degree, end up with a similar quantity of great music than if I did less. And otherwise, what I do with my spare time is actually just do things that I enjoy. Like, obviously, if I have, like work and that sort of thing, like you do your job, but don't spend all of your free time working and trying to create things that you can sell or broadcast, or things that, like matter or are productive. Have fun, because it's actually what your process is built around. So I play a lot of video games. I fuck around with Minecraft. I love Minecraft because it's just like a really great way to just mess around and have no one like judge you. There's no rules. You just make shit. I go outside and I run around. Like physically, I love running. I watch movies. I find things that I actually enjoy doing. And the more I'm in tune with that process of having fun, the easier it is for me to just sit down and start making shit without thinking. So yeah, that's something I'd recommend. I'm actually starting to think, because I haven't heard anything, I haven't read the chat or talked to anyone for an hour, and it's wigging me out. So I'm actually going to open up for Q&A early, rather than just trying to finish this off with all the shit I was planning on talking about, because I'm actually not sure how much of this is landing with you guys. So if you have questions or specific things you want to talk about, jump in now, and I'm going to open up for as much time as we need to do the Q&A, because I need some feedback right now. Cool. I'm going to eat some chocolate. I'm going to reward myself for talking nonstop for an hour. Matching. Cool. When I say I'll open up for Q&A early, it's 3 minutes early, so if I think of something, I'll jump into it, because there are a few things that another few things I'd love to talk about creatively, but I just kind of want to get a feel for what everyone else is wanting to learn. But has anyone kind of thought of anything or had any ideas sparked from anything I've talked about in the last hour that makes you think, oh, okay, to export the sound, you made in sound design session, you just dragged the audio file into the file session. No, so I bounce stuff down with, I consolidate. So with this, and this is what I've done with all these like weird palettes, I'll literally just like highlight it, Command J or Control J. And then that's the audio file. You will get this. Okay, so when I bounce stuff down, I'm not necessarily saying this is the cleanest method. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is the quickest method. And for me, quick is better than perfect in some ways. Cool. Why send to a bus instead of just do not drums group with shape of box on the group? I think for me, it was nice to have the mix down thing separate, because the other thing is I have the outs. So with my drum and not drum group shit going on, I also have these as like an output, and then I mix that down, or kind of like do masters to sort of squash all that together. But for me, it's a different process. When I get to the point where I'm like mixing outputs, I feel like I've already got a lot of things going on, and it makes a lot of clutter if I group everything group within group within group. Because what I basically want to do is have things arranged how I think about them, and then when I move on to another process, arrange that how I think about it. So when I'm writing songs, I want to think about the sounds and where they are in the track, and I don't want to see a million spaces generated just by groups. That's one thing that pisses me off, is like when I've got like groups within groups within groups, and then half of the project is taken up by like these spaces here. So instead what I'll do, and I'll even get to the point now where I like won't even make a master group here. I'll literally just have them out separately like this. Once I've actually figured it out and tidied it up anyway, I will I'll do it like this, and then I will route this to an output here. So basically what it means is all of my sounds while I'm writing the song are as neat and as consolidated as possible. So they're all here. And I can listen to these. And then when I move on to doing my output stuff, I scroll down and work on it here. So yeah, I recommend arranging things how you think about them. Okay, cool. Bass design, I'll do that at the end. Bass design is something I do nearly every stream. So I feel like if you want to learn bass design, I'll knock around with some stuff at the end. But also watch my other live streams, and just any time I live stream, jump on and ask me, and I'm happy to do bass design. But I do that nearly every time, so I'll leave it for the end. Okay, the mood board thing. I don't know if that's a question or you just wanted to say that stems some ideas for you. But yeah, I'll open up about that a little bit more, because this is something I really enjoy. What have I done with my window here? Cool. Mood boarding is actually super sick. This is for me, so this concept I was talking about of imagining everything as one thing, this is something that matters a lot more when you start trying to build a brand. And I'm also of the opinion that you shouldn't rush anything in your creative process. Some people feel like, oh, I need show visuals, I need album artwork, I need all this shit, and then I'll be like a legit artist. Fuck that. Literally grow your plant, grow your creative plant, do the things you enjoy doing, let it grow, and then once it's fruitful, then start you know, drawing the squares around stuff and like picking the fruit and arranging it. Because if you rush it, A, you're going to burn yourself out. You'll hate it. And B, it won't represent you. I reckon the best project is one that reflects all of the natural parts of your process. And this is something that I've done. So actually Victor Caddick did this visual for me, which was cool. But otherwise, I don't really get other people to do anything for me. And it's not that I'm against that. I think you may get to a point where you've been creating for a long time and you're like, okay, I definitely know that I don't like doing visuals. Get someone else to do it. That's sick. Let it be organic as well. Meet someone who you can work with and just, you know, don't rush that stuff. Actually, it was funny. My mum, I was on the phone to her the other day because I call my mum. You should all call your mum. Actually, that's the main thing I would recommend before all of your other creative endeavors. Call your mum. But she told me on the phone, she was like, oh, I saw this random fact the other day. Do you know a bamboo tree takes 5 years to pop out of the ground and then will grow 60 feet in 90 days? Like, and this is a very like Zen philosophy, but I think it's actually a fucking brilliant thing. So a bamboo tree, when you plant it, it needs to be watered and taken care of like any other plant, but it won't pop out of the ground for 5 years. And if you stop watering it or doing anything like that, it won't pop out of the ground. But if you do it consistently for 5 years, then by the time it pops out of the ground, in 60 days, in 90 days, it'll grow up to, it can grow like 60 feet. And I think that's a really great thing to keep in mind while you're growing your creativity. If you're early in the stage or if you're late, whatever it is, it might take a while for your project to hit full fruition or for it to become something that looks like the people you look up to. Just because it's taking a while does not mean that you are failing. It's actually something that you should allow as much time as you need, because when it does happen, if it happens organically, it'll work really well and it'll be fucking brilliant. It'll work really well and be fucking brilliant, to get scientific about it. But yeah, let your creative process grow. Like, I feel like there was music I was writing 3 years in that I feel like if I'd gotten somebody else to professionally master it, maybe gotten someone else to do artwork and rushed all of that stuff, I probably could have gotten a lot more traction with my music. But I just couldn't. I wasn't ready to be that invested in it. I just wanted to muck around and make sounds. And I'm happy that I didn't, because I've seen some people shoot off and do the whole, like, I want to be a famous artist thing, and then get locked down in that process that they had at that time when they needed and wanted to grow a lot more. But because they've got a manager now, they've got all this weight, they've got all these followers, they've got all this stuff that they're now dragging with them on their creative process, they don't actually have the room to grow. So wait for the right time. Let your creative process grow naturally. Like, put stuff out there, let people hear it. I think it's absolutely important. Don't be afraid to broadcast yourself, but don't let anyone pressure you into putting shit out there and doing things that you wouldn't normally do. Like, I had management last year for a while, and the manager I had was super cool, really lovely guy, and just wanted the best for me, like really wanted to just help me. And, you know, he was kind of pushing me into things. Like, he was like, we should get this guy to do your visuals, and like, why don't we hook you up with this label and stuff. But it pushed my process in a way that I stopped doing the things that I was enjoying doing, and I started rushing things and being really janky. And then because I was so disconnected from my own process, I started needing him to tell me if what I was making was good. I couldn't actually see it for myself. So it kind of stunted me. But I found since, we ended things there, really healthy, mutual, like we just came to an agreement. I said, look, I don't think this is working for me. Since then, I've basically ended up doing a lot of the things that I was relying on him to do. And he was probably better at it, but I'm doing it the way I want to do it. And I realized these were learning curves that I just wasn't ready for yet. And when I gave it space, I actually approached learning curves later down the track that I was trying to rush back then. So give your creative process time. Like I said, it's a plant. It's natural, it's organic. Don't force it. Let it grow and water it, enjoy it, have as much fun as you can, let it grow as much as you can. And then when it's fruitful and cool things happen, you can just pluck it off the tree and be like, oh, that's sick. And then you pluck another thing off the tree and go, oh, these could go together, and like, enjoy it. Yeah, okay, so that's that thing. But yeah, anyway, back to mood boarding. This is really good for honing in a whole brand. And actually one of my favorite boards on this is by no means like perfect. Other people are, you know, fantastic at mood boarding. Not that it's a competition. It's not a competition, but I really like this one. This is a real simple one, but this is show visuals. So just like things I would love to sort of have as my backdrop when I play a DJ set. So I've got like some oscilloscope stuff here, and I love that kind of like phosphorescent. I don't know what the word is. Phosphor. I think it's just phosphor. I don't know, that one, the pH one. I love that glow you get from old like analog oscilloscopes and stuff. I love the old like wartime footage and real black and white visuals. So I just collect this stuff. And this is another thing where I'm not rushing this. I'm not trying to draw like this, and I'm not trying to generate stuff like this. I'm just looking at it. And then when I get inspired, I sometimes have messed around with oscilloscope stuff. I'll venture into that. Grow slowly. You get the point. But enjoy as much as you can. Have as much fun as you can. Okay, mood board thing, visuals. Versatile results for bass fills, sound design and stuff. Honestly, the whole thing with writing bass fills and stuff, dynamic is definitely something that I've observed. I think Chi, if you want to learn how to do good fills and shit, Chi's pretty nuts. Like he will do like just pretty wild all over the place fills. But one thing that I've noticed, so I'm a big fan of Chi's stuff. If you haven't noticed, like I've talked about it in every single stream. But one of the things about Chi's music is it's very spectrally dynamic. So if you want to do stuff that's like really like exciting, jump between the spectral fields. So like big bass, big white noise, suddenly a really mid-rangey thing, really mid-rangey snare, really bassy kick with no treble, some like weird hi-hat flutter. Like having like really dynamic things happening all over the spectrum makes it feel really exciting. I don't know if that's what you mean by versatile results for bass fills. I don't know how best to answer that. I think, honestly, it's probably ironic to say this, but you'll figure out what you like and what sounds good. But just, I'd start out by emulating things that you like, emulating fills that you've heard. And then the more you do it in different areas, emulate different sounds you like, you'll start to find common threads where it's like, oh, I use this for this and then this always happens here and like always do this, and you can start using the same sounds for different things. But that comes down to fleshing out your process. Cool. How do you write a drop to make a remix? Your one. How do you write a drop to make a remix? Your one. I don't know if you're talking about the Rushing Back remix, how I wrote a separate drop. I'll come back to that, I'm not exactly sure. Drums piece, fills and arrangement, labels. All right, I'm being selective here because there's certain things I want to talk about. Because other things I talk about in my stream a lot, like sound design and that sort of thing, we do have plenty of time. Like I'm more than happy to go over an extra half an hour or whatever, so we got ages. But labels, did they reach you? Actually, yeah, this is a really good question. So for a while, a lot of people were pressuring me to send my stuff out to labels and kind of like market myself more. And that's something that like most people I know who make music are much more into marketing than I am. And I personally have a bit of a, like, I'm not anti-marketing. I think marketing is essential, but I developed a philosophy from the angle of I don't market myself at all, and then figured out where I need to market. So with labels, the first release I ever did, I sent that to a label, and that actually was a good one. That was cool. I ended up on, so that was Adapted Records. That was Up and Comers 2013. And that had also Frequent was on there. Johnny Hash was on there. And Fuse, who is now What Good, was on there as well. And that's how me and Johnny met, and that's how me and Frequent met. That was 2013. So it was really fun. And we all stemmed from there. But that was the only release I ever applied for. And they were a Melbourne label. And all I did was just send my demo. I wasn't hustling and trying to send to a million labels. And I consider working with labels can be a bit like finding new friends in some ways. If you hustle and just try and make friends with every person, you won't know who actually likes you and who actually enjoys your company. Showing up and being available and being visible is definitely the threshold where it's like, be visible, don't cower and never release anything. Like no one's going to release your shit, obviously, if that happens. But I feel like when you start pushing, you end up sort of, you remove things out of being on your terms and you're actually marketing yourself to them, and then they have the control. The ball's in their court. They can do what they want. This is actually interesting. So how I got on Inspected was like this. I've been listening to Inspected pretty much since I heard Coan Sound. Actually, no, before Coan Sound. I think I heard Culprit before Coan Sound, and I heard Oh No, My Rock, all those ones like that era. Finger, VIP. Fuck, I loved that tune. So I had a big phase with Inspector and Inspector Dubplate, and I really wanted to be on there for a long time. Anyway, so yeah, I tried sending them some of the Alberto stuff back in the day, that whole project. They never responded. I made Survive, and I was like, I know that Inspected will like this. I'll send it to them. So I sent it to their email, and they never replied. Never looked at it, and I thought, oh, well, I don't know if they looked at it. I just assumed maybe they heard it, and they were like, not as excited as I thought they would be, or I didn't know what happened. Literally 2 months later, Inspected messaged me on SoundCloud like, oi, we really like your shit. Can you send us something? I sent them Survive again, and the dude lost his shit. He was like, oh my gosh, this is such a sick demo. And I thought, I sent this to you. Like, you literally should have heard this before. But I realized labels, they're not looking in their submissions for new music. They want to decide for themselves who they like. And it's the same with making friends. People don't like it when you come up to them and try to force a relationship. Like, be friendly and available, but if you're someone who like looks like you're trying to win them over, there's kind of this weird like, I'm never going to make the effort for you because you're obviously always going to be making the effort for me. So yeah, nowadays I kind of have the philosophy of like, if you really want to be on a label, just like make yourself available. So like put your stuff into streams that they will see. Or like, if you want to go this far, I don't know how I feel about doing collabs for exposure, but sometimes it can be great. I'm not against it necessarily, but like, I don't know, work with artists or hang out with artists who associate with that crowd. Be around, but don't directly ask them to release your shit because you put the ball in their court. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So yeah, pretty much every label release I've done has been someone approaching me, except for the first release I did. And yeah, it's also much more motivating that way because you get to see who likes your shit and they go like, oh, I really want this release, and turning people down feels so, like, so, gives you such an ego. Not that it's a good thing, like, you know, make friends as much as you can, but yeah, like that's what I would recommend. Just focus on making good shit. And like I said, think about the bamboo plant. If you're not getting label releases, it's okay. Make sure you're broadcasting the shit that you're happy with, you know, seek to impress people. I think that's another thing that I really value nowadays. For a long time, I really hated myself for wanting to, I guess, get affirmation and have people like my stuff. But now I realize it's kind of an essential part of the process. And the only reason I started hating it is because I felt people didn't fully understand everything I was trying to do. And in that way, I just try and find people who do understand what you make and try to please them. You will not be able to limit the desire to please other people with your music. You will get good at pleasing yourself. That's totally valid. And you'll get in tune with what you like. But I think there is this really natural desire to want to make the things you do benefit other people. I think that's super healthy. So don't be afraid to like want to please people and stuff. But yeah, make your shit available, but don't be afraid if you're not getting label releases. Just make good shit. I reckon it's way better to be the guy who was undiscovered and got really good while no one was listening to him. And then suddenly, bang, you appear and everyone's like, where did this guy come from? And all of this traction happens at once. This literally happened to me. So I'm super famous now, and I get paid a shit ton of money basically to live and breathe. And Skrillex, I actually ghost produce all of his shit. So with Alberto, I had this old project, end of satire, beginning of seriousness, with Alberto, which is my old project. I changed it to like Andre. It was like just had stupid names and stuff. I had that project for 4 or 5 years, and I think I maxed out at maybe, not that numbers matter, but for me, I felt like my reach got capped after a while. I maxed out at like 850 followers or whatever. And I felt like over that time, I refined a lot of skills and got really good at things. And there were people who would listen to my music regularly and knew my stuff. But I found I took a little break for like 6 months or a year, and then I started releasing shit on the same profile, and no one was really listening to it. And I thought it was like some of the best shit I'd made. And then I moved to Brisbane, and through a weird chain of events, I ended up starting Copycatt. I had some ideas about like starting a new project anyway, and I had an experience with Monster Cat where they were like, we're not going to release anything from you until you rebrand. I was like, okay, never released with Monster Cat because I don't know, wasn't my vibe. But at the time I thought it was a really great opportunity. But when I started Copycatt, I put the same tracks that I'd put on my old project on the new one, and it was just that track. And suddenly, bang, I got like 500 followers in a month, and then probably a similar amount the next month, and it exploded way quicker. And I think what it was is I just spent a long time refining my skills, and I was broadcasting on this old channel, and the old channel looks shit as well. So like the visuals and stuff definitely played an element in that. But when I started my new project, because it was just suddenly great music appearing out of nowhere, people were like, who the fuck is this guy? And like I had EDM.com contact me, Sorrow followed me, which was like the biggest. I was so over the moon because I have like a massive, a big piece of my life is like based on music that Sorrow made. If you haven't heard of Sorrow, he makes like kind of like, it feels like such an insult to call it chill step, but it's like dubstep garage kind of stuff, but more moody. It's beautiful, like honestly, and like changed my life. There's so much of my sound that is based on Sorrow stuff. And yeah, within the first month, he found my music, and yet I was releasing the same stuff that I put on my old channel. But this is what I think, like just work on your sound. Don't try to force people to listen to your shit because, you know, there is a chance that maybe it's just not good enough yet, and that's okay. You need to just keep working at it. Have faith that it will actually be great at some point, but keep working on stuff. Make shit you like, and then eventually it will, like bamboo, just pop out of the ground, and it will probably happen really quickly for you. Yeah, so that was a tangent, but I hope that kind of makes sense. Yeah, so labels, let them find you. Just float around, like them, comment on their shit if you like it. Like be a local, but yeah, don't force that. I don't like it. I don't like it. In monitoring could be at CV shows unique tracks. Best way to enhance vocals from an acapella. I'm not the guy to ask. Honestly, I would recommend looking at someone else's tutorial for that. I'm not great with acapellas. I would say my basic understanding of vocal processing is take your raw input. I'd high cut it maybe so you don't get any like bass pops and stuff. First of all, do like a soft compression that's just like slow sort of like overall compression to level out the input coming in. Then do a quick compression, which is like leveling out all the ridiculous like random peaks. And then you like EQ and distort and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that's what I would recommend for making vocal stuff sound good. For like a as like an audio effect or like just like a weird sound, not necessarily in terms of like creating pristine vocals, but like more as just like an audio effect. I really like pulling the treble out of things. So like distorting stuff, like particularly in the top end, and like dry wetting it so you get lots of like vocal sheen or like redux and that sort of thing. They make like cool vocal sounds. But yeah, in terms of like proper vocal production, I wouldn't ask me about that. Cool. Sick. Okay. How do you go about writing a new drop without it sounding too much like the original? Well, see, the thing is for me, I find when I go and write drops, the process for me is really arbitrary. Like I'll end up making a bunch of sounds and then I'll kind of start with a groove and then I'll get an idea off of that where I'm like, oh, actually, you know what would sound sick in this? Like a pluck. And so I'll like take some of the drums out and like wedge a pluck in there. And then I'll be like, oh, it needs some percussion. And then once you've got all these sounds, you probably listen to them all and be like, this sounds like a mess. Or like this, because you weren't thinking about the final result when you made it, it'll have a bunch of problems. And so what I do from there is I'll generally duplicate it and then try and like strip back all the things that I don't like about it and refine the things I like about the idea again. And I'll do lots of iterations of that. So the first drop I write, I might not even use in the track. Usually I'll do like an iteration of that where I refine the things that I like about that groove. And then I'll do a duplicate of that where maybe I do a different variation. So like I said, I end up with a whole bunch of shit in the project where it's like all of these duplicates. And then when I go to release the track and finish it, I'll literally highlight an area and that will be my track and there'll be a bunch of shit left out on the end. So yeah, it's just a matter of variation and you sort of like work with what you're hearing at the time and acknowledge that, you know, if it doesn't sound good now, you can always listen to it once you're done and rework it. So you like, and this is the cool thing of like, particularly with production, because you're making everything and then it stays there, you've got the benefit of making everything sound great and like tweaking things as much as you want to, and then being able to just use all of that to start a new thing. So yeah, nothing has to be brilliant straight away. You can make a huge mess and make it sound shit and then refine it, which is what I like doing. How do I go about percussion, pluck, stab elements in my drums? As in, like, how do I go about making plucks, or how do I make my drums plucky? Cool. All right, look, I'm just going to assume that you mean, like, how do I make plucks and that sort of thing. Look, honestly, anything can be a pluck, and I actually really enjoy the process of making plucks from random things. A really cool thing that Mr. Bill showed me, I think it was Mr. Bill, like, I used to make plucks in Massive, so I'd literally just get, like, sine wave at a mid-range note, so the actual note I would want to play, and then I'd have another oscillator which would do a sub note, and I would do some variation of, like, an envelope for a filter stab, or I'd make the sub stab so it would, like, squash the main sine note into distortion, so it'd make this like noise. So I used to do that, but now, like, I really enjoy using weird samples to to make stuff. So, like, even with this is one thing Bill showed me, is using the envelope detect function in let's get some. Okay, this is the whole song. But using the envelope detection in Ableton to just, like, create plucks. So if you change the transient or the stretching mode to just, like, play once through and then stop, this envelope function here basically decides how long the decay is on that envelope. So it'll actually, like, trim it down and make a little volume stab. So if I drop this right down to 0, you'll see what happens to this. Oops. Oops. Just pull this out here. Hello. See, suddenly I've got a whole bunch of plucks there. And if I consolidate that, so just Control J, bang, here's some plucks. And the cool thing is with plucks, I've realized that, and the thing is, you can get fussy about your plucks, and I like to just think about things to just make them sound how you like them. But for me, logically, the reason plucks sound good is because with bass music, you have lots of sub, lots of treble. Plucks sit right in the middle of the range where there's not lots of shit going on, unless you have, like, some ridiculously mid-range neuro bass, in which case plucks are probably not going to be the best choice to go over the top of. Like, if you have some big brrr and then a pluck in the middle of it, you're probably not going to hear it because those frequencies are going to be clashing. But if you've got, like, big sub distorted white noise and, like, a bassy kick, and it's just a pluck in the middle of that is going to sound sick. And a good example would be is it on? No, it's not. Okay, I'll get it on SoundCloud. Personally, I think it sounds good, but this is just, of course, I like my own music. But where's made this fucking beat twice? This one. So this is mostly, the snare is really mid-rangey, but everything else is just bass and white noise. So you get the idea, like, the pluck stands out massively in that one because the bass is really bassy and the treble is really buzzy, but there's not much going on in the mid-range. So there's lots of room for that pluck, and it sounds really good to just have this sudden dynamic pop happening in that range. So yeah, if you make plucks, the reason I brought that up, I had a point, which was plucks sound good because they're mid-rangey. So build your plucks around the mid-range. So with this, I would try to accent all the cool things happening in the mid-range here. So there's a frequency there. Actually, that one's good because that's got a really distinct harmonic there. It's really loud, sorry. And then sort of for, like, stimulation, I don't think about everything super scientifically like this. It's just when I come to explaining things, sometimes I have to kind of, like, look at it in a scientific way. But to make this stimulating to listen to, I would put a little bit of something in the treble just so it, like, your brain hears treble and just knows that that sound is there. Bang. Great pluck. I will see how this sounds. I think we got a lot of shit going in this already. All right, what I'll do, I'll turn this. Cool. Let's try and mimic that melody with this pluck instead. Do, do, do. Actually sounds pretty sick, I reckon. And this one's like even longer. See what I mean? Like, it's just a mid-rangey plug. I might even keep this plug. I quite like it. Yeah. Sick. How do you scroll on the audio clip? I'm glad you asked that because this was a real life-changing shortcut for me. So, Control-Alt-Shift basically allows me to do this. And then if you just do Control-Shifts, it'll snap to the grid. And if you hold Alt, it gives you that fine scrubbing. I think, yeah. Yeah, so Control Shift basically, and then if you hold Alt, you get fine scrubbing. I love that. See, I know plucks. Cool. All right. How do you refine your skills regarding sound processing, getting super clean, precise, tight mix? That's a mixture of just like trial and error, so like doing it myself and sort of analyzing shit that I like. And I take influence from a variety of things. So I don't get my sound design emulation entirely from electronic music. I like to emulate a lot of like analog sounding stuff. So I listen to like Arab music. He's not exclusively analog. Like he uses an MPC or whatever, which is probably somewhat digital. It is digital. But that kind of dirty, like distortion, more hardware sounding thing, I try to incorporate that. But the thing is, what you refine, like you'll build techniques, but they're based off what you like. So the important thing is kind of to refine what sounds you enjoy and build a taste. And like I said, drop stuff into Ableton and listen to it, analyze it. I became really obsessed with waveforms and stuff and figured out the whole like oscilloscope trick when I make subs, because I was looking at waveforms and being like, how the fuck does this sound good? I'm like copying all the harmonics in the frequency spectrum, but they don't sound right. And then I figured out, oh, actually, it's more to do with the waveform, which is phase. But yeah, just like analyze shit you like and you will develop an ear for things that you enjoy. Don't just like copy tutorials. Like tutorials are good, but realize that your ear is the thing that actually will allow you to get really good. So yeah, drop sounds in and just try and emulate things by ear. Like, oh, is this sound brighter than my sound? Is this sound bassier? Is there something gluey? Like, get good at identifying what sounds good. And it'll be different as well. Like, somebody else might hear something in a sound and go, oh, that's good because it's like a really loud third harmonic. That sounds fucking nerdy, but like, you might be like, oh, I just like this sound because it's fucking crunchy. So don't just emulate something the way somebody, like if somebody else likes noisier and you also like noisier, don't emulate noisier the way they would. Emulate what you like about that sound and learn what you like, and you'll get good at making your own sounds. But yeah, the one thing I could tell you about how I got good at making certain sounds was actually just doing it by myself. I didn't copy other people's techniques. I would just emulate what I liked. And some of my favorite samples I've made were in seasons where I wasn't liking what everyone else was making sound design wise. And I just kind of tried to make things that sound good to my ear. But yeah, okay, mud pie session, somebody asked about that. So everyone's like reposting their questions. It's cool. How do you start a sound design mud pie session? Look, there's lots of ways to do this. Again, this comes back to having fun for me. I'm just going to save this just in case I don't like it. Yeah, wow, I spelled that right. I'm going to eat some shapes if that's all right. Just, if you want some free Foley, so good. I don't know if you guys probably don't have Arnott's stuff in the States or overseas. This is an Australian thing, but any Australians will tell you barbecue shapes of the shit. You got to get the original flavor though. They made an updated flavor for no good reason. Like they were always the best biscuits, and then they made this new flavor, and it was like, why did you change that? It was stupid. Anyway, back to sound design. For me, it's about having fun. So there's two ways I'd go about this. One is emulating. So I have sounds. I actually have a sound design playlist It's not very big because I obviously lost interest in it pretty quick. I just like made sound design influences. Oh no, okay, I got a few things in here. I have specific sounds that I really like. This is a cool one. The Fixer by Mako. Mako no longer makes music as far as I know, but Russ Brooker, yeah, he's really good. I always play Gobek Le Type in my stuff. No, maybe it's lick. This is really annoying. Oh no, I just don't know how to spell that word. Russ. No, okay, it's not on there. It's cool. It's like 125, like really sick. But yeah, anyway, start sound design. One of the ways I would start is by emulating. So the main bass in that noise, I love that. So for a long time I was trying to emulate that. So oftentimes I just open up a new session and just try to emulate sounds that I like. And if I got close, or better still, I just made something that was cool regardless, I'd save it. I'd save a preset or whatever, or I'd just start writing a beat around it. So a lot of my beats would start with sound design. So yeah, first thing, and probably the more productive way is, yeah, emulating shit that you like. And again, like I said, I have a playlist of shit that I like. This track was a huge influence on me in like 2013 or 2012. Yeah, okay. And then the other way, once you start getting like a process for things that you like, you've emulated a few sounds that you really enjoy, you'll accumulate techniques for that sort of stuff, which is what happened with me. So emulating this disprove sound, what I was hearing was, okay, it sounds like there's like a bunch of real distinct harmonic peaks. So what I did is I opened up Massive and I made sub frequency and then just like put in other sine notes and tuned it until it sounded like those notes. And then I distorted it and it worked. It sounded good. So then I had this like, yeah, I did call chips biscuits. These are, biscuits are like hard crackers basically in Australia. Or they can be sweet. Anyway, I gained a technique from emulating disproved stuff. And so then that became a technique that I played with. So I was like, okay, put in a sub note, put in the harmonics, put in some distortion, and I just started messing around. And that's the other way I would start doing sound design, is I'd open a plugin and start messing around with techniques I already know. Yeah. Sick. Okay. How do you make sure, all right. So how do you make sure what you're making is sounding good technically when you're doing a sound design, regardless of what you're doing with it? Honestly, I don't have a goal in mind with my sound design. And this is the thing, like, my process is by no means perfect. Like, I'm only telling you this is just the progress I've made. So like with this stuff, like some sounds I make, they sound brilliant in the project that I make them in. And then I put them in a different project and they sound shit. The important thing for me, I find, is that I just make sounds that I like and sound good. And often when I start from that point, I will learn to build my tracks in a way that works with those sounds. So you kind of like work outward. You have the sounds that you like and the things that you like, and you'll work outward from there and learn to glue them together. But yeah, it doesn't always work. Like sometimes I have some sounds that sound shit when I drop them into a project, and it's because they're just EQ'd weirdly, or they're EQ'd with a different context in mind and I have to redo it. Yeah, so I actually don't know if my sounds are going to sound good. And the interesting thing is sometimes when I'm writing tracks and I put sounds in and like make them sound good within the track, when I listen to them on their own, they sound shit. But for that track, they really work. So there is a bit of push and pull there, where like you'll do some sound design that won't work with anything. It just sounds cool on its own. And you will probably, if you ever use that sound, you will have to write a track that basically gives that sound as much space as it needs. Doing sound design in context, that's probably something I would refine. It almost becomes its own process where it's like, okay, to make good sounds within the project, I usually have spectral elements. So like a sound might sound good because it's got a nice sub element and it's got some nice treble stuff going on, and then some kind of alternating mid-range thing. And so I would have those elements prepared rather than a full sound. So I'd have like a really nice, and I have a bunch of like really nice 808s and sub stuff, which is not really separated into a separate folder, but lots of, I just love 808s in general now. Once I started figuring out how to make them like analog sounding, I'm just like the thing I enjoy. And yeah, some people will tell you it's just like a sine with some distortion or just like a couple harmonics. It's not. Trust me. Yeah, so you just kind of get a feel for what elements happen in your songwriting process and what elements happen in your sound design stuff. It's not all like something you do beforehand. But what I'm finding is that just if you do separate sessions, just do it for things that you do kind of fuss over and figure out what it is that you fuss over and what bogs you down in the songwriting process, and kind of just eliminate as much of that as possible. And also, if you just enjoy sound design for shits and giggles, absolutely just do it. Like, do things that are fun. Don't worry about the output. Like, sometimes I will make memes for fun. Like, I literally just drop audio files and like random samples of shit and just like apply stupid effects to it because it's funny. And there's no productive purpose for that so far. And then I started putting memes in at the end of my songs. And so, yeah, it found a purpose. But I reckon fun and enjoyment and process before output. And then you'll figure out your output once you have a process. Okay. Other questions? Yeah, just use ears. Worry about mixing later. Mixing is its own sound design process. That's what I say. And that's something you do when you sort of write the track. Also, context is a really helpful thing there. So if you're writing for like a stage, if you're writing for DJ sets and that sort of thing, this is like another topic on itself. I really wanted to talk about that actually. I don't know how to like make it long anyway. It's probably a short topic anyway, but mixing and like having context in mind is a really great way to tether your creativity to things and not to put pressure on yourself. But if you're someone that's like, look, I'm making stuff and I'm not motivated to do any specific thing with it, or like I'm not finishing tracks. I found one thing that helped me finish tracks was like, oh, I've got a gig coming up and I really want to play this beat, but it right now is only 8 bars of a really sick beat. And so that would inspire me to make a really cool, quick, easy mixing intro. And make sure that the elements that mattered would pop on a live system. And I'm not a mixing I'm not a mixing expert. I literally just mix things how I like them. But I plug in my monitors because I mostly mix on headphones. But I'll plug in my speakers and listen to it on there and walk around the room and listen to it and think about how it would feel hitting my chest in like a big system. And then I'd start to think about how I would mix those elements, or like what things I would make quieter, and or even in a songwriting sense, I would start to think like, okay, this section with just like the big pluck and big drums and not a lot of whole shit going on, like that will sound good in a live setting. Whereas say if you're writing an album and you want it to sound amazing on headphones when you're lying in your bed and you've got nothing distracting you, then you will probably think about mixing from the perspective of the stereo image and the movement of everything and the texture and the interactiveness of it. So context is a really good way to sort of think about mixing and that sort of thing. It's not necessarily a one mix fits everything, although I do idealize that. I'm someone who I would love for my tracks to sound relatively good on everything, but I mainly think about played on a big system, played on a mobile phone, and played in headphones. They're the main things that matter to me. In other contexts, I'm not so fussed, but I feel like that covers a lot of bases anyway. Cool. What other questions have you asked? Cool. Is 90 BPM your favorite BPM to write in? It has been for a very long time. Yeah. Not now. I'm trying to move away from it because I am getting sick of it. I listen to like a lot of slower stuff, like 150, 140 halftime, like Herzeloid, Ivy Lab, that kind of stuff. Pretty sick. Oh, okay. When you're saying mud pie, are you saying, because I've never used this term before, are you meaning like making a big brick of audio? I'm trying to understand, like, or do you mean just like a big long chain of like sound design? Is that what that is? Can someone explain to me the whole MudPie thing? Is it literally just like about making a big long chunk of random audio that you chop through to use for a song? Is that what that is? Yeah, okay. Yeah, for me, that's just all about pleasing my ears. So I make up a whole bunch of weird sounds. I just try to get the best sounds out of whatever thing I've made, and I'll get a lot of variations, but making things sound sick, thick, making things sound sick. Hey guys, it's Skrillex. I'm going to show you how to make things sick. The plugins I use and the sort of things I focus on are about the beefiness of the sub. So I use M oscilloscope to monitor like the actual waveform. M saturator is a really good saturator for just making things loud without being super bright. It'll just like warm everything up on the bottom and it'll sound really like whatever that is. It'll sound chunky. But sometimes it can sound really bloated. That's the best way I can explain it. If you run something really bassy in M saturator, it can sound bloated rather than like something like saturator where it just sounds really like, you know, distorted and loud. So yeah. Dynamic tube is another cool one. It just adds like a nice crunchiness to stuff. What other things do I use? I like a lot of analog sounding plugins. And that's one thing I really fuss over nowadays is getting sounds with like good natural kind of texture. Because while I'm writing a song, I can always whip up some quick thing in Operator or Serum and have it sound pretty digital, but just sort of tailor it to the context of the song. But making things that have like a really round, sort of warm, natural sound with like good tone on their own, like analog sounding stuff, that's not something you can kind of just whip up. Sometimes you got to like take your time with it. So that's the stuff I do in separate sessions, like making 808s and that sort of thing. But then again, sometimes you have mixing plugins in your project that will bring out that warmth anyway. So I know there's no right way to do it, but yeah, there's some plugins I really like. FabFilter Satin. Honestly, I don't want this to demotivate anybody, but I would say part of what makes my sound design sound a certain way is my ears. So I'm looking for certain things in my sound. There's certain sounds that I like. And I've noticed that actually steers me away from some sound design that I think is cool that other people do, that I don't do just because of what I'm looking for. So like a lot of other sort of like neuro producers particularly will make a lot more bright kind of white noisy, like stabby sounds and stuff. And their like Reese's will be more like mid-rangey and filtery and stuff. Whereas nowadays a lot of my stuff is like big bricks of bass, like just bah. I can literally show you like in my bass folder, all the recent stuff is just, there's a bit of movement, but so a lot of it is very bottom end focused. But yeah, again, refine your ears. Just like look at stuff, listen to stuff that you like, and you'll sort of figure out what you enjoy. But yeah, for me, I'm fussy about like the tone of the waveform. And when I open like say Serum, or if I don't use Serum that much nowadays, I've started using Vital a lot. I really like Vital. That's pretty sick. But I kind of focus on making a cool sine shape, and I'll like modify it in different ways, or using simple waveforms and processing them so that they sound nice. And then I can kind of tailor it to make a certain neuro sound. Goes a longer operator sound design audio file thing. Yeah, cool. Okay, so vocal effects thing in Sweet Soul. I'm pretty sure I could do that quick, and then it sounds like everyone wants some bass design stuff, so I'll jump into it. But okay, that is just a big delay. I'm pretty sure it's actually one of the Ableton stock ones. So it'd be like ping pong, or you can do it with echo. Unless you're talking about the redux, which is like this sort of audio degradation. But yeah, I could put a random sound in. I'll literally just do this. So it is big tail, and then I basically, I'm either modulating the feedback or the dry wet. Probably both, actually. I'd really just do a macro. So I just like group these up, put these together, cap this feedback out so it doesn't kill us all. And then, so maybe I'll give it a little less. Actually, give this more. That's effectively what I'm doing. And then the other thing I'm doing is modulating this. So I've got like a redux and I'm just like modulating that. Sick. Mad thing. Yeah, I think that's cool, the whole macroing thing. So Jake just said for variety, I like to set a bunch of macros to interesting effects and then just mess with them while you resample. That's great. Good job. Yeah, that's a really fun way to do things. And in particular, if I make a sound that's really cool and it's got certain movements about it that I like, I try to link them to a macro rather than having to like modulate every single parameter separately. A good way to create movement with your neurobases is actually to kind of like draw out a pattern and figure out which effects to kind of modulate within that pattern. So say I've got like an EQ that's smashing the bass in, and then like a reverb thing, I might draw, sorry, when I say smashing the bass in, I mean like gaining it into like a saturator. I might like draw an envelope so that it's like, let's just say this is our bass here. There's nothing happening, but you can imagine it in your brain. What the fuck? Oh, it's an idiot. Never mind. Okay, yeah, so like, let's say I just do my like sub like this, and this is my pattern. Basically, all my other modulation that I do for this bass will try and work around the movement of this first pattern. So then let's say I have like a reverb thing that I'm modulating. Just find something intuitive here. I might make sure that the reverb fades in the gaps. And then the same with filters and that sort of thing. I sort of work around one set of movement automation to get this whole thing sort of like shaking or moving in a certain way altogether. Yep. Yeah. So for anyone asking, you will get a recording of this at the end. StereoGate will send it to you. Sick. Okay. Bass design. This is one of those things I'm not sure. Usually I can make something pretty good right off the bat. So I'll try and do some bass design and at least just cover some of the techniques I do a lot. The operator would be good because at least everyone owns that. I could do FM8, but I feel like I got a bit carried away. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to funnel all the operators into the one. So we just got the sub frequency coming out. Cool, this is our bass frequency here. Actually, no, I'm going to run a parallel. So 2 operators coming out, 1 feeding into each operator. Okay, we'll try and cover a few techniques here. I'm going to start off by running it into saturation volume. Okay. And what I will do, I'll try and just tailor this around some automation. Cool. All right, let's do another one and I'll make this be like a really bright. Cool, and I'll, let's leave our first thing visible. and then control this one. And what I'll do is I'll kind of just interchangeably modulate this. Let's change that harmonic. Actually, no. Let's try and get some variation by sometimes stacking it on top. Yeah, so I'll kind of start getting some movement, and then I'll try and it's a good way to suck more harmonics out of this. See what else I'm going to do. I'm also going to use a high pass to just randomly cut off some of these bottom frequencies. Okay, now OTT will suck out some top end here. Okay, generally once I start to get like a good broad frequency spectrum of like sound, I'll start EQing and trying to pull out the things that I like. And then it's sort of a slow process of sculpting the sound to my ears. So it's not so much about doing like extreme sound design effects as much as it is just sort of gradually improving it. What happened there? Oh. See, sometimes you just crank the bass and it sounds fucking great. I do want some kind of saturation, but maybe just a different type. Wave shapers are a really fun thing to experiment with. I had another process for a while where I'd literally drive one sine wave into a wave shaper and do some like ridiculous algorithm. So just fuck it up completely and still be like tailored about it. So like thinking about how the points will affect the sound. And then add like OTT and saturation, and with OTT, that's the one thing, like OTT was kind of really necessary for this process because it generates just a ridiculous array of frequencies. Yeah, see, this for me is almost too like flabby now, too farty. And so I mean, it starts to sound bloated with the really round curves. Oh shit, I didn't even know you could do that to us now. How wild is that? Fucking Bezier curves, man. That's mad. Fucking Melda production, man. So good. Alright, so then another thing I might do, try and get treble to do a nice sparkly thing. Cool. I'm going to leave that for now. Okay, this is where dynamic tube can be really cool. So if you have something that sounds kind of squarish, and what I mean is like odd harmonics, like really honky, none of that kind of crunchy saw wave sounding stuff, dynamic tube will just change it and make it sound really saw-like. So dynamic tube is a really cool way to just get like a crunchy variation of a bass. See how now that's gone from being like honky, metallic squarish to crunchy saw kind of thing. All right, OTT again. do you make the mod lines curve? Yeah, hold Alt. Cool. Multi-band settings. My OTT looks mega different. I might have changed something at some point, but I don't know. Like I sometimes use the X for records, OTT, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, you can take a screenshot of this if you like. I'll just let it sit there while I eat a biscuit. Wait, you can just pause it. But yeah. Modulating the dry wet of the tube is another cool thing. You can sort of create that dynamic between square sort of metallic stuff and then give it a sudden bit of crunch. Sudden crunch. Standard OTT would boost it higher, but probably. Now, with neuro basses, I find one of the things that makes them sound really good is like dynamic between the frequency bands. So like with this, you already notice it's the movement. So like you have like the treble going and the mid range going ring, 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 and then the bass will kind of like have these flaps in it. And that's what makes it exciting, is all that dynamic. So you can manually do that by messing with the output. Or like if you have a multiband plugin, or just mess around by like literally volume automating the different bands. So I will do it with the mid-range. I don't know if that is doing something. Yeah, it is. Okay, I'll do like a little stab thing with the high end here. Also, if anyone else thinks of other questions, feel free to drop some in while I'm doing this. I do bass design all the time, so can't say it's, yeah. Anyway. Actually, you know what? I'm probably picking the wrong OTT to do this with. I'm actually going to do this on the later one, because this is actually going to have an effect, because I'm OTTing it again. But let's go like, make a stab here. A couple of these. Okay, you definitely can't hear that stab, so let's not do that. Let's modulate the low end here. That'll definitely do something. I definitely want bass here. Sudden crunch. Yeah, so I make a bunch of weird shit like that. And variation in neuro basses will sound good. Cool. Writing melodies, a whole bunch of different things. Generally, I hear something in my head, or I'll drop in a sample and gradually hear through, because sometimes I make a huge mess of sounds and they all stack together. And by accident, you will just like hear a melody amidst the mess. It's actually interesting, Radiohead. So the reason Radiohead are called Radiohead is because Tom York allegedly used to do this thing where he would set up multiple radios all around him and just tune them to different what the frick he'd tune them to different radio stations and just listen to this cacophony of sound and hear ideas mixing in with all of it. And it can be like that, particularly with like neuro and that sort of thing. Because you just end up putting shit tons of crazy sounds in there, and you hear like a specific point where you're like, oh, that's sick. That sounds like a melody. And I had that, actually, I was working with this dude, Christian Tiny Ghost, and he made this pluck and he had corpus on it, and he was just playing different notes randomly, but the way it was triggering corpus, it actually made this audible melody. And I'm like, oh, dude, this has a melody. He's like, what are you talking about? And I literally wrote it out on the piano. I'm like, doot, 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 doot. And he was like, oh, yeah, I do hear that. And then, yeah, but that was by accident. It was literally just like, so yeah, if you can sometimes hear melodies in mess, and that's what I like to do. But then otherwise, yeah, sometimes I just jam. I find riffing, like vocally, like if you're at home, it's easy for me because I live by myself, so I don't have to worry about other people judging me. But when I listen to music and stuff, sometimes I just vocally riff over it. Like I'll just like hum some random thing, or literally maybe I'll do it ironically, just be like doot 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 doot, like just make some stupid voice or something like that. But I guess just refining your ability to just like make up random shit on the spot. So yeah, sometimes I literally just musical type it in and like play a melody. And I've got the benefit of making music that like sounds good if the timing is loose. If you made like drum and bass or something like that, where everything's like super on the grid and you're trying to write a melody, you would have to like write it and then snap it to the grid, I guess, or I don't know, or maybe just play it perfectly. But yeah, so yeah, when I write melodies, sometimes it's like that. I just write shit in. The other thing I do is I play guitar. So if you have an instrument, I don't try to do this perfectly. I literally just play. Oh yeah, you heard indent. That was actually that wasn't the track. That wasn't the track that I made the melody on. It was this other one which we haven't released. I don't know if we will ever release it now, but it was sick. But guitar, particularly for chords and that sort of thing. Like that's the main thing I do when I play guitar is just mess around with chords, because it's so easy to transpose with guitar. You can literally just play a chord and then move it around the fretboard with like bar chords and stuff. So I write a lot of chord progressions that way. I'll play it out on the guitar, and either I'll just figure out the main notes and write them in MIDI, or I'll record it and drop the audio file in and like either literally just use the guitar samples because I like that, or I'll write melody that replicates what I'm doing on the guitar, like with the notes. Which is cool because I can like actually match the inversions and the actual chord structure rather than just, you know, making the triad. Is there a key modulation in Sweet Soul? As in like, does it shift between different keys? Or when you say key modulation, is that more like to do with the sound, like parameter modulation? I'm not sure if you're referring to a musical term. I didn't actually study music or anything. I literally just go by ear and mess around with stuff, so I don't know exactly. I don't know a lot of musical terms. Also, okay, so we've been going for 2 hours now. I'm not in any rush, but I would like to go soon, or like get on with my life at some point. So if you have any other questions, drop them in now, and I'll pick a couple and finish it up. But okay, yes, I'm assuming you mean musical terms there. Yeah, scale. Okay, yeah, Sweet Soul, it jumps between D sharp minor and F minor, and that's literally just because the sample I picked, I'll just try and find some melodic sample. I did this. Ow. Let's pick something that will sound good with, I guess. I literally made the riff like duh, and then the next bar, I went up 2 semitones because I knew that it would kind of work. It roughly, like most of the chords, kind of glue together. How would you make melodic effects from these kinds of sound design sessions? With bass design, I have no idea. The only thing I do with like melodic bass design, if I want to make something melodic through processing, I use stuff for like a delay or corpus or like comb, anything that generates a tone just through processing. So like delay is really good if you do like a really tight delay. And if I make a pluck of some sort, oops. Oh, why did I just consolidate that? That was totally pointless. All right, cool. So if I made a pluck, I use delay. See See, I've got... That's a fifth. And then use another delay, I guess, to... like melodic effects layers that go over the top of basses or drums. How do I make that stuff? See, I don't really... I'll just get carried away. With melodies, I like to work from samples because I process a shit ton anyway, and I'll make weird things out of the melodies and do octaving and stuff, so I'm not too afraid of sampling. Obviously, I tried it, like, obviously, if it'll generally be derived from a source that's from a different genre, just because that's how I like it, but there's no rules there. Like, you can sample whatever you want. But I sample a lot of jazz stuff, or like, yeah. I have stuff in my downloads. What have I got here? So like generally I'll try and just slice chords out of things and then I'll like stretch and chop them. So like... But I try to make long tones and like blocks of a certain melodic element. Processing you generally tend to employ for drums and samples and make things sound the way you want. This is hard to answer. I feel like what you're asking me is effectively like, how do my mix down sound the way that they do? Like what processing do I use? And I don't have like a set process for it. This is again like where I'd say my ear, like there's certain things that I just like. I don't really think about it, but a lot of it is gluing stuff together. So particularly with drums and bass, I kind of like try to think of them. And this is where like playing with sidechain and compression, like on a bus, comes in. So I try to like glue everything together in terms of drums and bass. And actually one thing I focus on when it comes to making a kit sound good together is I try to make the phase line up. So like say with this is why sometimes fading shit together can be cool. Actually this kick's way too short to give you an example here, but just say like if I use a random kick like this, let's just use that one and get the warp off there. Cool. Generally what I try to do, or what I think sounds good, is phase aligning stuff. So I'll try and make sure that these line up and then glue those together. And yes, literally sometimes like, so with Meat Grinder, the kick and the bass are literally one element. So the 808 is the kick. And I made that. And so it sounds good and gluey because the bottom end and the, like all of the bass is glued together as one thing. So I definitely keep that in mind when I'm like creating it. And this is why I said, because this is something I fuss over, I start beats that way sometimes where I'll just make a mix down and like something fat that sounds good. And I focus on gluing the kick and bass together and making sure the side chain is tight and kind of like leveling out the snare and the hi-hat so everything kind of feels nice together. And then I can just use that kit and leave it as is. But so the one problem with this is that there's treble in this kick and then there's nothing in the 808, so it doesn't sound perfectly glued. But I reckon if I low pass this, see how nicely that glues together? Even just that, super fat. Also, this is another little sneaky thing in terms of eliminating unnecessary work. I have a little rack that's a part of my project template. So when I open up Ableton, this is here. It's linked to key macros. And what this is it isolates different bands. And there's also a mid-side thing here. But basically, I use the square brackets. So the square bracket going this way, or where the lines point to my left, is the low pass. So it's basically the bracket that looks in the direction of the low pass turns the low pass on and off. The bracket that faces that way turns the high pass on and off. So I can listen to the top end and then mid-range. And oftentimes when I'm trying to get a beat to glue together, I isolate the different bands. And so I make sure that the treble sounds good. And this is a really interesting way if you're trying to make a drop have a certain characteristic or give a beat a certain energy. Isolate the different bands and see if it generates that energy on its own. So say, for example, if I were just listening to the bottom end, I'm imagining, to put a weird spin on it, I guess this is a good way of explaining it. If I was hearing this beat through the wall, would I think it was a fat beat just by hearing the bottom end? So sometimes your treble can be super smashy and it sounds massive, but just something's lacking. Then you isolate the bottom end and you go, oh yeah, actually, if I just listen to the bottom end, this sounds really lame. And vice versa with the top end. Sometimes I have my bass all like tight and sounding good, but for some reason the beat is boring. I isolate the treble and there's just not a lot of activity there. So then I beef up all the stuff in the treble and then suddenly it's this big chunky thing. So yeah, isolate your bands, and I literally have a master thing. I have a master thing that I link. So I've got low pass linked to a key, high pass, and then my band pass is linked to the apostrophe key. Then I've got a mono thing linked to my equals key, and then a side thing linked to the backslash. And so basically at any point I can listen to my mix in a specific band. So it's the side, mid, band pass. And that's really good, being able to isolate bands. That will help you sort of glue things together a lot more. And then, yeah, the other thing is limiting and compression. So a lot of the reason some mixdowns sound really good is because they're flat. So basically they're predictable to a degree, and your ears, it's constantly hitting a certain level. No, I made these racks myself. I haven't put them up anywhere, but honestly, you could mimic this very easily. Like I said, there's no specific frequency for the low pass. I'm just like, this is where I feel like it's just the low end. Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't even feel right about selling this rack. It's so fucking easy to make. Shame on you. Make this rack. Literally. Okay. It's a low pass, a band pass, a high pass. The mono is literally just the utility plugin with mono. The side is literally just the utility in mid-side mode cranked fully to side. I have span on there as well, which I never use. But literally just put these things in and then Control K, click on the on-off parameter and link it to the key that you want it to be linked to. And then once you've set that up, save that macro, drop it in your user library, build your product template, and save it as the template. If you don't know how to do that, Ableton, if you go Preferences and you go to File, save current set as default. So build your build your template. I definitely recommend this, and this comes down to actually like figuring out your process, figuring out the things you do often, and then build a setup that actually works for that. Yes, okay, share a link to my sidechain tutorial. I will do that now. It's a basic version, so there are more steps that I do for my full-fledged sidechain setup, but the core concept is really what's important. You can sort of flesh out the nitty-gritty things. And look, also, if you have any other questions after this, just join my Discord. I'm not very consistent. I'm not making any promises. I don't jump on Discord all the time, but even if I'm not on, there's someone there who's probably heard me explain this. I explain the same things pretty often. Shape of box, Copycatt. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions in my Discord. Like, I pretty much reply to everything when I can. Sick. Okay. Yeah, I put it on Upscale TV, which is sort of, it's kind of a channel, but not like, I created it and started uploading stuff there. That's the link. Oh, wait, no. I just realized you guys won't see links. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll literally just paste it. Oh no, what I'll do, I'll open it. There we go. This is the name of it. Search it here. If you want to type it in the URL manually, you can. I can't send you guys a link in the YouTube chat. I had also pasted this in the Discord as well. My Discord, I'll open that up as well so y'all can see. But yeah. Sick. My phone is gone dead. Cool. All right. Discord's gonna take a while to pop up. I might even just ask if Vince or one of the Stereo Gate guys can send through a link to the Discord. He already did that actually on Friday when we had that thing. Continue that mud pie session. Honestly, look, there's nothing I would do to this that I... All right, hang on. Let me humor this for a sec. Output gain. Where's the mid-range one? This one. Yep. I want this back again. That's cool. All right, look, let's finish with this bass. I'll muck around a bit longer, and then as soon as I get bored, we're done. I'm usually prepared to go over time with this stuff because, like, I don't know, maybe I'm not someone that likes scheduling everything to specific clocks, and also I really like getting sidetracked. Where's this macro? The other thing I'll also do is if I find a specific, like, let's say I've just got a whole bunch of random automation going on, I'll specifically find a spot that sounds good and copy the automation from that so I can look at, like, where are the parameters sitting to make this sound good. I like this. So I'll literally highlight everything from that and put it here. And then I can work from that standpoint. Ooh, tube, man. Yeah, that's actually interesting. That'd be with or without tube, like. Okay, one thing that I'd actually like to add, changing the phase of things will drastically change the sound because all of these are perfectly in sync. You are only getting the interaction of these oscillators as though they're all in line. So if you change the phase of any of these, you should end up with a different sound. So let's go this one. So. Okay, now that we've got a couple of bits here, I'll resample these. I'm just going to freeze and flatten them. It's pretty quick. Oops. Cool. So we've got two basses here. And this one. I actually like this bit the best because you get those little bits of crunchy tube, like just here. Okay, one thing that's cool that I like doing with white noise, instead of putting it in with the bass design, is I do it afterwards. So this is D, I'm pretty sure. So I'll do the frequency for D, oh sorry, it's D sharp, I'm pretty sure, which is like 37 hertz. So this should sound right if I get it to 37. Oh, do I might need to turn it on. Yeah, that's pretty close. And I will do, try a half rate. So half of 37 would be, 30. Is it 30? Sorry, not 30. Help me with maths, guys. Would it be 18.5? Yeah, would be. I think it'd be 18.5. I'll even do 2. So let's go 37. And then I can modulate them interchangeably. Half. Let's go full. All right, so then what I'll do, and I'll also just do volume in itself. I'll just cap this out to 0. And then basically what I'll do is I'll treat the white noise as its own neuro element and fade it in and out. So where the bass is, let's like sort of focus on having it in those areas. Like, and you can do a whole bunch of cool dynamic shit with that. So this is like the overall volume here. And then I'll play with different sort of... How do you know what the phase of the original is? I don't. I'm fully just guessing here. Like if I really want to, what I'll do is I'll do like an auto pan or some sort of tremolo and then print it to audio so I can actually visually align it to the right phase. But if you mean like the tuning, like the sub note, literally just chuck tuner on something and change it to Hertz mode. Yeah, so it's like it's like 38 Hertz or something like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect, like, I don't know. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll get this segment as the half rate and then the full rate one here is like the Buzz Lightyear. And then that's cool, so let's put that here. And like, look, that's a rushed version, but honestly, yeah, you can, like if you vary up the white noise, that can do a lot. And these aren't even glued together yet. So once you saturate that, you will get a whole bunch of, cool shit. And yeah, also if you want to get the phase perfect, freeze and flatten. And then, oops, I like to copy, not cut. Last bite here. Okay, so this here, let's have a look. I usually like to have the white noise on the down, but it's personal preference. Yeah, I like it on the down here because that's theoretically how distortion would work, is where it gets quieter for a brief moment where it's not hitting the ceiling. That's where all the other elements would come in. So I have the white noise kind of sitting in the middle of the two oscillations. And like you can duplicate this as well, so you get longer segments of white noise and just fade them together. I'm going to kind of fade around these mid-rangey bits. It's probably pretty drastic. This is just a thing that I like to do. Yeah, absolutely. Reverb as well. I haven't added any stereo stuff to this at the moment, so good old dimmy. I call this dimmy for some reason. But dimension expander. I like to just have the mid-range and then I'll have, whoops, dry signal. How do you glue the tracks together? Is there a key command? Oh, as in like group them? It's Command G. And then Command Shift G ungroups them, I'm pretty sure, or just Control Z. It saves audio to my hard drive. How do I stop from doing that? I don't believe that there is a way. It does have to create the audio file to do that. Because otherwise, what audio file are you putting in there? Like it can't, you know, like Ableton's not going to store that in RAM because otherwise you just end up with heaps of clutter. What's cool is modulating reverb. So that also gives you ridiculous dynamic. I'm going to do the woofs right after this. Oh yeah, you could do this with a reverb as well. You'd probably get a lot more like tone out of it because you'd have a longer tail. But... Cool. All right, synthing, kicks and snares, operator, kick 2, and then I'll like use samples and stuff as well, like vinyl samples and stuff, and I'll process them. But that, for me, I think is all I have time for. I'm ready to eat some proper food. These are really delicious, but they're not a proper meal, unfortunately. Thank you so much all for coming. This was actually really fun. yeah, if you have any more questions, jump in the Discord and drop them in there, and I'll try and check them. The Savo, mate. And yeah, if you want to, also there, I do have streams and other sessions out there. There's a guy, Jose Le Magnifique. If you just type in Copycatt live stream, his channel is the one that comes up usually. So all of my live streams are on there, and they're usually like 4 hours long. So yeah. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. And thank you to StereoGate as well for hosting me. These guys have been really easy to work with, super straightforward, really lovely people. Also super patient with me, as I found out on Friday, which was fun. And yeah, super fun. I look forward to meeting some of you as well if you want to hang out in the Discord and stuff. I probably did meet a bunch of you on Friday and we all hung out. Yeah. I feel like that's everything. And yep, just to reiterate, you will all get a copy of this recording. StereoGate will hook you up with that. So, Martin, big piece. I feel like I should self-promote something while I have the opportunity to, but I don't have anything mad to self-promote yet. My socials are all, it's Copycatt with 2 T's, obviously. So yeah, pretty much everything. If you just type in whatever it is and it's Copycatt, you'll find me. Actually, all right, I'm going to do this real quick. I'm just going to force this on you guys. Just a bunch of productivity plugins, productivity programs that I really like. Shift is one. I'm just going to show you this really quick. These are all like my notes and shit. Shift is like a productivity app. This is not sponsored, by the way. I just like want to tell you guys about this. I love fucking talking about this stuff. But Shift is this productivity app. It literally hosts like everything you can think of in terms of like your day-to-day programs in one window as well, like a Chrome tab. And then in every single app window, you can also open up a Chrome tab and run shit. And it links in with your emails and that sort of thing. You can use Facebook Messenger. You can look at stuff on Instagram. You can use Later. So this is a social media scheduling thing that you can like schedule your social media posts, which I like doing because I hate fucking around with social media. Shift is sick. The other thing I would recommend is Notion. Well, I'm just talking about productivity apps. I'm taking the opportunity to make everyone listen to me. Notion is like a note-taking app, but you can fucking do anything with it. Like you can do Kanban boards and like little toggles and shit like that, which is really, really fun and really good. And you can build pages and like ideas. You can do so much shit with this. Look up Notion. Notion's free also. Millernote was the other thing I talked about today. Definitely get Millernote. You can do a paid version of that, but the free one's pretty good and they don't limit you ridiculously. And like I said, you can paste all kinds of media in here. So you can do images, videos, GIFs, audio, URLs. You can embed stuff. So like I embedded SoundCloud in my mood board. And then obviously, you know, stuff like Dropbox, which I use a lot to arrange my files. Yeah, okay, there's my random little productivity plug there for no apparent reason. And that's what I'm going to finish with. So big piece. I'll stream again on my Twitch soon, hopefully. But until then, make some mad beats.